Welcome to the Cycle Starters podcast, where we explore ancestral healing, spiritual journeys, and the power of breaking generational patterns. I'm your host, Heather Rebecca Wilson, and today I am so thrilled to welcome Tara Cridland, a certified trauma-informed embodiment coach and spirituality teacher with over 25 years of experience working with the body. Tara combines her expertise in trauma release, energy medicine, and spiritual guidance to help women transform their deep woundings and unhealthy relationship patterns. She specializes in working with past life healing, generational trauma, and helping women access their higher selves and spiritual guides. In this episode, we'll dive deep into Tara's unique approach to quantum healing and discuss her powerful workshop available inside the Ancestral Healing Collective Resource Library, Quantum Healing of Non-Serving Beliefs in the Shamanic Realm. We'll explore how she guides women through sacred ceremonies, helps them release limiting beliefs, and empowers them to connect with their ancestral wisdom. Get ready for an enlightening conversation about spiritual transformation, ancestral healing, and the journey to wholeness. Let's welcome Tara to the Cycle Starters podcast. Hi, Tara.
Hi, Heather.
I'm so happy to be spending time with you today.
I'm actually happy to be spending time with you today. It's been too many days in a row.
So for those of you guys who don't know, Tara and I are really good friends. I consider her a sister, and we also co-create together. We're collaborating on different projects. It seems like all the time, which is great. So you are a gift and a blessing in my life. Thank you for saying yes to being on the podcast, and thank you again for leading such an amazing guest expert workshop inside the membership.
It is such an honor. Just really grateful to have your friendship and also your professional partnership. So it's really just an honor for me to continue to have you in my life and for both of us to continue to encourage each other to keep growing. So one of my favorite people.
Right back at you. So, well, let's dive into it. So, my membership, the Ancestral Healing Collective, it's a sacred space for female-bodied cycle breakers and cycle starters. It's a sacred space for them to alchemize deep ancestral wounds into spiritual gifts, creative potential, shifts to higher consciousness, and embody joy using astrology and pleasure as medicine. So let's start with your ancestry. What do you feel comfortable sharing with our community about your ancestors and your ancestry?
So my ancestry biologically is European, pretty much. Like I have a little tiny minute drop of East Asian in there, but honestly don't identify with that. Was surprised to find that. Of course, I think we all have evidence when you start doing your DNA that you're not just one thing, right? So it's really actually, I think, eye-opening in the best of ways. But I'm very European in ancestry, but very American or US. I like to say United States. I really actually had to dive into my ancestors because what I realized is my family had a history of not really talking about relatives. So didn't really know a whole lot about my family outside of who was alive at the time that I remember directly interacting with. So that is something that I have been actively uncovering and then starting to have information come around in very interesting ways since I've been saying, hey, what is my ancestry?
Do you happen to know what regions in Europe your ancestors are from?
Yes. So primarily we're German and French, British and Irish, and then we're Scandinavian. And actually my mother's side really connects to the Swedish Norwegian side, even though we're not a lot, but they really do connect more with that in their own connections. So Scandinavian and then a little bit Eastern European. So what I realized when I look on a map is pretty much my ancestors lived right along the outside edges of Europe. So we were clearly nomadic / sailors, which is probably why I love the ocean so much, because it really is all about the outer edges of how they got to the lands through the boats versus going through land on foot.
Gotcha. Okay, that's super interesting. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. Do you mind sharing a bit about your story, like how you ended up becoming a coach and a healer and quantum healing practitioner. I'm so curious. I think a lot of people, are curious as to like how did she end up doing what she does? Because you're pretty magical. And, we've
You.
exchanged sessions with each other. I've experienced your medicine. I think you are an amazing practitioner, an amazing body worker, and just an amazing person all around. But can you share with our community just a little bit about your story?
Yeah. So, I was thinking on that because, you did give me the questions earlier for me to kind of sit with. And I was thinking on that and just how the heck did I get here? Right. Because it's so easy to uh, go down the normal societal path. And I just didn't. I never did. As a kid, I realized looking back now that I always had a connection with spirit and spirit world, that I was always kind of the weird one in the family because I was more sensitive. I kind of knew things I shouldn't know. It kind of freaked my family out a little bit. But at the same time, my mom was also pretty magical. So she was very accepting at the same time. So she was encouraging and yet a little like scared of what I would say next. She said sometimes I would have these ponderings as a little kid that were like, how the heck did you know that? I had this story she used to love to tell everybody. And that story was I was probably like 3 and I said, "Mom, you're a mom and I'm a baby." And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "So when were you a baby and when was I a mommy?" And she's like, "What do you mean?" "No, I was a mommy. I was a mommy before. So when was I a mommy and you were the baby?" And she just looked at me because she said it wasn't what I said, it was the way I said it. Who are you? So that's kind of how my life started. And I realized my whole family is. My brother used to be able to kind of read people's minds and he would say out loud what people were thinking. At the same time, that stuff wasn't widely accepted in the 70s, 80s, 60s. So a lot of that got shut down. And my mom never discouraged, but she never quite encouraged me. But I always knew I was magical. Even as a teenager, I'd say, well, if I want it, I'll get it. I always thought I'm the weird kid with the bright red hair and people always teasing me. And yet when people had issues, I was the one that people would come to and they seek advice for as a kid even. And so I realize now looking back, it's because I had these natural psychic and mediumship abilities that allowed me to help people because I could read them so quickly. They come and talk to me and I would see the bigger picture. The other thing was I wasn't ever really judgmental of people. I just had this innate understanding of people and how they worked and not necessarily their physical beingness, but their higher beingness, right? I understood their soul. And I know that sounds deep now, but as a kid, I didn't recognize that's what it was. Right now, as a 50-year-old, I can look back and recognize that's what it was, is I always knew that there was more to life than just who we are in this body now. So as I got older, one of the things I was really good at was massaging. I was the kid that I would always get my parents and everyone in the room to rub my back, rub my belly, and I would just make my rounds till someone got tired and then start again. So I loved getting massage. And so I learned how to massage. So I used to massage my mom when she came home from work, I'd massage her feet. It was funny because I realized I was lucky in that. I was lucky because we were an affectionate, healthy, affectionate family, right? Like we had a lot of affection that was always loving and touch oriented, but it was also very healthy. With even my mom, I think was pretty advanced because she really understood consent, making sure that we knew we had autonomy of our bodies, always checking in to make sure we're okay, but also always being available when we needed to get a hug from her. And my dad was the same way. My dad was that way too. We could easily run up to them and ask for hugs and affection, and they were always open and willing to give us that. So I think that's why it's just a natural progression for me to go into massage therapy because I realized I was really good at it. And as years passed, I was really good at it because I also was able to connect and get these psychic hits off of people. So I was able to kind of read their bodies. I don't know what the term would be, and I even teach spirituality, but bodies talk to me. So as I'm massaging them, I would hear whole sentences. So I have clear sentient, which is I have clear feeling. I feel the energies and the emotions of people around me. And I could literally, with my fingers, go right to that spot because I could feel it within my own body where it was in theirs. But I also would hear them talk to me. They would literally say, like, if I got to a certain area of their body, like, I have trouble forgiving. I had trauma here and this. I would see images of something that happened in their life. And so I was able to massage them and also hold space for them, which is why with the magical progression, I moved into eventually coaching people, because when I had them on the table, I noticed too that people opened up to me really, really easily. And when I asked them why, because I was always curious, like, why do you feel so comfortable sharing like your darkest things with me? Because people would literally, even in line at the store, would confess to me things they never told another soul. And they would tell me, I know that whatever I tell you, you won't judge me. And I know that whatever I tell you, somehow you'll make me feel safe and that it's okay. And that's what I got told a lot, even in my 20s. And I thought, what is this? So I just kept learning. I had this epiphany today on something because I really wanted to help people. Like, I always had this drive to help people. But I also realized that in order to do that, I had to help myself. So I was always in this journey of how do I make myself the best version so that I'm holding space for them in that best version for themselves too. So it was kind of this, looking back now, and we'll get on that, astrology wise and all that. This seems like when you read my birth chart, my progressive chart, even my solar return chart, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Because this is who I was born to be in this lifetime. Was this deep soul that's also fun and light, but I have always loved diving deep. I love figuring things out, how to help people heal. And my biggest passion has always been, how do I help you become so deeply healed and empowered in yourself that you do not need me anymore? And I used to have massage clients say, but then who will sit? But you have to pay your bills with this. If I leave you, and I go, honey, once you leave me, my friend, my client, once you leave me, someone else is ready to take that place. And I want them to, because I want you to be able to not need me anymore. And someone else will find that spot. I will never be lacking in that, because there always will be someone who will find that light and come in, and I'll help them to their level until they don't need me anymore, with the hope that all of you outgrow me. And so that's kind of how that started. And that's where massage came into play. Yoga instruction started because I started doing yoga for my own body. My lower back used to go out all the time as a kid. I had a couple of little accidents. I've been seeing a chiropractor since I was 13 because my back would get injured really easy. And I realize now, coming out later in life, well, lower back is usually for most people not feeling supported, not feeling like they can get the support and the assistance they need, that the weight of the world is too heavy on their shoulders. So that was kind of the shadow side, right? The shadow side was, I was so good at this that my family unconsciously left me to be in charge of that, to be in charge of caring for other people's emotions, even as a little girl, of being in charge of figuring things out, and holding space for everybody, even as a little girl. So having that created a belief system in me that I could not seek support with people around me, because it was my job to support and hold them. And so understanding that, I fell in love with yoga because it was something that actually helped me continue to stay limber, but also strengthen me. If you're at the gym working out and you're lifting weights and you're crying, someone's going to be like, what's wrong with her? But if you're in a deep floor fold or a back bend and you're crying, people are like, oh, she's just having a release. If you dive into what yoga is, and I know I'm a white American woman, a Westerner. So I really was careful even learning this. My direct lineage is Patabi Joyce. And so I really learned about yoga, what it really means. And I still do everything I can to honor the lineage versus just being like a Westerner teaching yoga. That is not that I still keep up to date on that stuff, like how to greet people, that namaste is not the light in me meets the light in you. Namaste is now used currently as, hey, what's up? At the end of the class, I'm not going to say namaste anymore. It's not appropriate, because then I'm like, what's up? What's up? So understanding that I can do this, I can still be available to teach this, or just to hold space, or just to engage in it for myself as a healing space. And so all of that kind of came into play over the years. I just would follow the thread, is what I like to say. I followed the thread. So as people started opening up in my yoga classes, people started opening up with me on the massage table, and they started having these deep emotional releases. They started having these psychic abilities. They started having these things happening. how do I continue to support them? And that's when naturally I started going into coaching. My first coaching training was actually to also help me learn how to feed myself. When I found out I had an autoimmune disease that requires that I have to be gluten-free, what do I do now? And this is 20 years ago, before we knew all about it. So I became a health coach first. And that program, which I still highly recommend, it's a great program. Actually, Deepak Chopra took over. So there's even more availability and flexibility in that school, Institute for Integrative Nutrition. I became a health coach and I learned how to be a life coach, a peer counselor, and how to teach others how to eat and have a healthy relationship with their food. So, and that was a natural progression too, being that I'm teaching people in massage how to be healthy. So it just kind of was that umbrella. And as the years went by, then that went into becoming a sex, love, relationship coach. At first, I did just a general life coaching intensive, which is where you and I met with the Divine Living Academy, and wasn't fully in alignment for me in that way. So I searched for others, and that's when I went into first studying, thanks to you, actually. I first did the School of 1 Million Arts with Mama Gina, and then I did the sex, love, relationship coaching program with Layla Martin. And I think that was my big catalyst because she does so much trauma work. Yeah. And that's really, I think, when I blossomed. And that's when a lot of my spiritual abilities that have always been strong really came to the forefront of being accepted fully with me. And then I did a really powerful year-long intensive shamanic training with Rose Cole at I think her academy is now called Sacred Oaks Academy. I do a energy medicine. It's called guided energy medicine. I am also Reiki certified, but I really identify with this more because it's more of a shamanic background of connecting all of your abilities with the energy healing. And so I'm not just doing that alone. It's really a frequency that works directly with my guides, your guides, my abilities, and going into the quantum field. And people are like, what? What's the quantum field? But it's also the shamanic state. So we hear shamanic field, quantum field. Those are all that vibration of frequency where the Akashic records are. So that's the frequency where we get to get all the information. And we can utilize that to heal everybody, including even down to physical. I work on my partner. I make myself available to have his guys work through me, and we do regular energy medicine sessions. He has like eczema on his leg. It'll go away overnight with that. He had it so bad when him and I first became a couple that his friend who's a doctor was afraid that something much worse was happening. And it was in that moment I heard, because my thought process was, well, energy healing can't heal that overnight. And I heard my guides clearly say to me, healing can be instant, but you have to believe it to be true. You have to believe that healing can happen and be miraculously instant in order for it to work. You got to get out of the way. And I went, whoa, I'm blocking him from healing by not believing he can heal instantly. And I said, okay, I trust you. Healing can be instant. I'm going to try that out today and put that code of healing, of belief on. And literally what had been this horrible rash on his whole leg that was looking like, I don't know what it was looking like, but it looked like, it looked like potentially he was going to have that leg amputated because it was so bad in that area. The next day, the whole thing was gone. And now it's only maybe a little splotch that'll show up that just indicates it's time to do another energy healing for him. And even so, it's really more about the other things that are happening energetically for him, that it's almost like that's his barometer of we need to clear the energy out and help him with that next level. And so that's our way of telling you, hey, we want you to be in that realm for us and on his behalf so that we can work with him and keep him going too. So it's really learning to listen and be open to not only listening, but then be open to just going forward without overthinking it, without trying to reason it away, which is what's been happening more and more for me lately. Just trusting. So yeah, that's long answer for that, but that's how I got into it. I learned how to embrace. I learned how deeply important it is to do your internal healing work. And I love talk therapy. This is definitely not against that because I have great friends that are psychologists and psychiatrists, and we talk about this. And they even say there's only so far they can go. We have to work with the physical body to release those memories, belief systems, charges, in order for them to be open for more healing. And so I realize now, and I'm starting to specialize in that more and more, is before we can even touch the spiritual part of it, the physical healing that has to take place. It's not what we talk about, but how do we go in, find out what's living without story, just find what's living in there, do the physical movement, the breath work, whatever it takes to release or allow the healing to take place in the physical body opens them up. And now what's happening is a lot of my clients are suddenly having all these spiritual abilities they didn't even know they had, or they're having awakenings. So how do I support them in that? So that's why that's all included, is due to the fact that once we do the physical trauma healing, we do the physical shifts and transformations. I have a friend and they shared with me that since they've been learning some of the physical stuff, that suddenly they're catching themselves speaking loving to themselves. And it's one of the things I learned in my trauma trainings is you don't have to try to change your behavior. Once you begin to heal the physical trauma that's within, when you actually learn how to work with the body directly without being in story, when you learn how to let those things go, then you automatically have new belief systems. You automatically have different behaviors. You automatically find it easy to talk to yourself with more love because there's none of that stuckness or the mess inside anymore. There's a clear channel to your higher self, and your higher self just loves you and knows who you are and sees your greatness. And if you want to call it your subconscious, great. It's still that part of you that knows who you really are, which is a divine being. And so that part of you can come in now and actually have an effect on you because you're not stuck anymore in the survival mode. You're now in thriving. I learned something interesting. Free will and karma are kind of the same thing. And we don't have free will as long as we have those deep belief systems within us that don't believe we're worthy, that don't believe that we're lovable. If we have those deep belief systems within us that are blocking us from being our true selves, we don't have free will until that's gone, because we will constantly come back to continually proving over and over again that our belief systems are true, so we can reinforce those belief systems. So when we naturally heal and change, those belief systems go away. We now have room to have all these options to now have free will. And we have all these options now to recreate us into our authentic, highest divine selves. And that includes our spirituality. Now, if I am no longer these woundings, who am I? What am I? And so having all of that together, including embracing and loving your pleasure and your sexuality, all of that is part of this journey of being in this human body and moving into the 5D realm. I have found in my own personal journeys that every time I have an epiphany, every time I have a client with a certain challenge that comes up, I have to look and say, how are they mirroring me? Whatever they're going through, how am I mirroring them, or how are they mirroring me? And when I can do my own internal healing work, then they start to have an easier time doing their healing work. And so it is this reciprocal, continuous journey that they don't even realize we're having, because I'm aware, but I don't go, hey, guess what? Your wounding was my wounding. Now that I healed it, you're healing it. I'm not going to tell them that, but I'm going to do that. I'm going to see it and I'm going to work on it and heal myself. And then suddenly the options present themselves for that person to heal in their own unique way, because now that energy has shifted in the quantum field for everyone.
I love that you're speaking to this, because I do think there is a misconception out there about, healing practitioners and coaches, or, anybody who's working in wellness. If you're a practitioner, you've done all of your healing, right?
Yeah.
And the reality is that healing is not linear. It is a spiral, and there are layers and layers of healing. And our clients can be the biggest mirrors for us, as you were saying, so
Absolutely.
we're still on a journey as practitioners, right? We're still learning and growing and evolving. It's not that we've reached some sort of pinnacle and we're above anybody else. And you also spoke to how you love to empower your clients to not need you anymore, right?
Yeah.
You're not a cult leader. Cult leaders want people to follow them, and that is not at all your energy. You empower people. You want
I
them
want
to
them to know what I
be
know,
able
which
to
is
support
you.
themselves.
You are the most powerful thing in the room. And when you really understand that, there's these epiphanies. Well, if I'm the most powerful thing in the room, then that means everything that I am living is somewhere, somehow by choice. And it's not to diminish the pain that you have felt. It's not to diminish the trauma you've been through. But it's the reality that once you recognize it, it is up to you to take the steps to start to heal yourself so that you can become your most powerful version. And like I
Yeah.
told several clients, I teach you the tools, but I can't make you use them. You're the one who has to pick those tools up, and you have to learn how. Like if I say, here's a screwdriver, here's how you use it, you have to pick that up and actually use it. And so I remind my clients all the time when they say, oh, it's because of you. It's only because, no, because I've only seen you once a week, once every 2 weeks. After that, everything that happens in between, that's all you. You did that. You took whatever I taught you or just presented to you even, and you utilized it on your very own. And look what you did. Like, yay.
Yeah, anybody who gets to work with you is so lucky.
Thank you.
Because you're a wonderful, wonderful practitioner and a just incredible being. So thank you for sharing all of that. I want to dive a little bit deeper into your ancestral healing journey. I want to know what have been the biggest challenges for you along this journey, and connected to that, what would you say are the patterns that you're dissolving in your
Yeah.
lineages?
So I was thinking about that this morning, and I realized that even though I kind of was working on it, I didn't really understand it. And I don't even know where I got the information. It was actually a college professor putting on ancestral healing for white body beings to help dismantle racism and ageism, all those things, but to do it in a group where it was not going to cause harm. Like you have to do it yourself. And I thought, oh, that's great. This was a few years ago. So this is when my journey really consciously started on my own ancestral healing. When there were questions that came up, I realized I was literally the oldest one in the group. I realized that this was a college professor and it was a bunch of college students. So that was my first thing, is not ageism against them, but I had ageism against me. Like, oh, I'm this old woman in the room. And I really wasn't. I was only in my late 30s, early 40s. But it felt almost unnerving that I was in this group where I was all by myself as this person who had more experience. And I remember having this experience, and it's funny because this is the first time I've ever shared this. I had this huge epiphany. I don't even remember what it was, but she had asked us something about ourselves and our ancestry. And now knowing what I know today, I realized that in that moment when it was my turn to share, I don't even remember what I shared because I left my body. When I
Mm,
was asked to talk about my ancestors and why I was on this planet and what I was here to do, I don't even remember what I said. And I realized I went into a trauma response. I left my body and fiercely disassociated. And by the time I came back to the group and who I was talking to, I had clearly offended a lot of them in the group, from whatever I said, thinking I was talking about love. And I think I mentioned a word that had to do with genitalia that like triggered some of them that were dealing with trauma. Because I was newly in my journey of embracing my own sexuality and healing my sexuality and that as well. And I don't remember what I even said. And then I was asked from the professor to have a private one-on-one with her. And I loved it. I appreciated it so much. She clearly been doing her work. And she said, I noticed this and this. And I usually find that when this is happening, you are dealing with your own trauma. And I want to just kind of check in with you. And when I asked you stories, you didn't even have the answer, really. Whatever you answered wasn't even the answer to it. And I realized in that moment, I don't have history of my family. I can't tell you about my ancestors because I don't have resources by this time. So I was definitely over 40. Both of my parents had passed away and all of my grandparents had passed away. So I didn't even have reference points to even go back to because there was no one alive anymore to even ask the questions. And so in order for me to heal my ancestry, I had to go into a different realm. I had to connect to the ancestors that were not in body anymore. And that started my healing journey. And so for a long time, I was just connecting to the spirit world, finding out who I was in my own spiritual abilities, doing my own healing work. And it's only been probably in the last 3 years that a spirit medium that's a good friend of mine, my dad showed up twice. But the last time he showed up, he actually said, I've been here this whole time. I'm training you. The shamanic abilities that you have are from my lineage. They're not your mom's. They're actually from my lineage. And that made sense because we didn't have history. Even if we could ask questions, we didn't have the history past my great grandmother. because she was adopted and it was closed adoption. So I want to share this because this is really powerful for people who are doing their ancestral healing work. As I consciously said, I'm going to dive into this. I don't know how I'm going to find out or how I'm going to heal this, but I'm going to do it. My oldest daughter at the time, just out of nowhere, got this drive to do research. And she discovered back in the early 1900s. Do you know how adoption came into play?
You're going to have to explain it for
Okay,
everybody because I think most people don't know. You've told me.
the history of adoption is very insidious.
Mm-hmm.
It is not a happy history, which is unfortunately most histories that have to do with children or women's bodies are usually not a good or happy endings kind of story, including even gynecology. How it started was awful. So there was a woman, she was a white woman who had a father who was a judge, and she had this theory that she could prove nurture over nature. So she created adoption. And what she did is she created all these orphanage homes. She started to flat out kidnap, had a team of people who either flat out kidnapped young blonde hair, blue eyed children under 2, or she would, because many of the families she took these children from were poor and they didn't read. Or she would approach them and say, hey, your child looks like it's ill. I'd be so happy to take them to the doctor for you and pay for everything. You just have to sign this permission slip. And it was really a paper that was signing away their parental rights. If they refused all of that because her father was a judge, her father would actually deem these parents incompetent and then remove the children and take away their parental rights. She would then put all these young children in orphanages. They all faced horrific abuse. And then they would be adopted out to rich white families who were looking for pretty little blonde hair, blue eyed babies. And that's how officially, that's how it got on the record. Adoption has been where people have just taken children that weren't claimed or that were slave children or whatever. They've done this for thousands of years. But this is when it became an official recognized system that we now know today as adoption. And there's still really insidious things happening for children in that field. Now, not to say there's not really wonderful things, because there are some really wonderful parents who really have prepared and are amazing parents that they as a family, the parents and the children would never found each other without the option of adoption. But the reason why I'm explaining that is because my great grandmother was closed adoption. We have no idea where she came from. We have no idea what her history is. And my daughter started doing this research out of nowhere, and we can't confirm or deny it because there is no proof. But she was a little blonde hair, blue eyed baby. And so we believe that there's a potential that she was one of those children that was taken from her family, because I have this innate knowledge around herbology. My partner calls me a kitchen witch because I have this natural understanding of food and the way that things nourish you and change your energy. And so with all that being said, I had to think about where did that come from? And it comes from my dad's family. They have this innate knowledge around herbs and plants. So interestingly enough, this is where my ancestral healing started coming into play. Out of nowhere, I got attracted to a African violet. My grandmother used to have African violets, and she could propagate like nobody's business. And one would turn into 50 in no time. And she just always had African violets in the house. And I was living in Mexico, and this woman, I found this random African violet at this nursery. They're not normally available in Mexico. And this woman stopped me and she says, where did you get that? And she's talking to me in Spanish. And I said, it was at the nursery. There was only one there. And I just knew I had to have it. And she says, you know that African violets are a sign, if you're attracted to it, that someone in your family is a witch. That is actually proof that you're a witch. I'm like, what? So then from that point, I had some friends that were natural psychic mediums too. And they had some information come through and they said, your grandmother was taken. And I said, what? And they didn't know about my daughter doing research. They said, your grandmother was taken, that she comes from a long line of healing. And there was 2 different mediums that told me this, that did not know I had been told this. She was taken. She comes from a long line of family of healers. Healers do not give up their children. They pass this information down and it continues through the family line. She's from one of them, but for some reason, she was removed from her family, not by choice. And so they're telling me this because an ancestor showed up and told me about this. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. It seems so far out there. But as I started diving into this, now there's information coming up. Now, suddenly I have family members that are aunts, uncles, cousins that have little bits of memory of someone telling them something that they suddenly shared with me. And my aunt told me not too long ago, when I finally came clean that I was a psychic medium, as well as a coach, she went, interesting. You know, Granny, because that was what we called my great grandma's Granny. She was Grandma Granny. They said, you know, Granny had those abilities. I said, what? She said, yeah, she was super psychic. She literally would have people say, tell me what my house looks like. And she could literally close her eyes and do a walkthrough of their house and tell them in detail what their house looked like without having ever been there. I was like, are you serious? She said, that's so cool. Like, you have the same abilities as grandma. I was like, why didn't no one ever tell me this? So this is where, when you don't know who your ancestors are, it's okay to keep going into doing your ancestral healing work. Because as I started learning this, now things are coming out, little things like that, where either I get information from a psychic or medium that I'm doing a reading with, or that suddenly like got information that leads me down a path of healing. That was unexpected. You know, I'm learning more and more. And I thought, because my mom's family is kind of magical naturally, I thought it was always my mom's family. And it turns out it's my dad's. And so I'm now developing, because my father passed away when I was 17. I'm now developing this beautiful, deep connection to my father and to my grandmother and to people of that side of the family that I would have never had felt connected to at the level I do in my heart, in my spirit, had I not been open to this healing work. And then information's now coming to light. So it's really interesting when you finally commit to doing this ancestral healing work, what can happen. I even had that this morning. I woke up and I have something that I've been sitting with someone else in my life that I'm like been thinking of, because they're in freeze mode. And I realized, oh my gosh, this person's actually mirroring me. And so I had this huge ancestral healing that's going to happen later, because we realized that one of the things that my family does is, the core belief that came up out of nowhere was, if I truly am vulnerable and I let people know me, really see me without being this wise woman, without being the coach, being the healer, if I'm just me, that I'm not a good person and I'm not worthy of being seen. And it was like, where did that come from? And so then my partner does NLP and timeline therapy, and he's a master hypnotherapist. So he asked these quick fire questions this morning. And this is important. My partner always says, are you okay if I switch into coach mode? Are you open to me asking these questions? So then I'm willing or not. And I said, yeah, let's do this. This is clearly coming up for a reason. And he quickly asked, is it a past life or generational? And immediately, generational. And this is where I invite everyone, as you're listening to this, listen to and trust the very first impression, feeling, image, or thought that comes up, because it's always the right one. We as humans are really good at talking ourselves out of it. So the very first thing was generational. And that came up before he even finished his sentence. And then he said, mother's side, father's side, mother's side. How many generations back? 3. Great. Okay, well, I have to be at work, so we can't do this, and I want to give it the time it needs. Can you wait till later tonight for us to dive into this? I'm like, absolutely, because clearly this has been a blockage that's affecting other parts of my life. There's other things that I've been really hitting a wall with. This is not just the only thing. I'm sure there will be another layer, but this is a huge integral part of what has been blocking me. And it's all thanks to having someone in my life who's also having something similar. So if I hadn't been thinking of them and concerned for them and wondering what's going on with them, I wouldn't have seen. So the way that manifests is, whatever you're doing that's working right now, that's taking you forward. Let's say, for instance, like I have 12 sessions of coaching left, and now I'm down to my last session. I didn't realize I only have one left, right? And I'm making forward movement in my sessions, but I'm not sure how I'm going to pay for the next round. And suddenly I go, I'm going to hold on to that last session because I might need it later. And I'm not going to do this next session. That's going to be the breakthrough, because I don't know. And so I do that with a lot of things. So I gave that as an example, because then what happens is, now I'm losing the forward movement of that coaching, because I'm not going to use that last session for like a year. And now I'll be in a completely different place than where I was. And not trusting that if this is meant to be, the way to continue doing this work will show up. Right. So I was doing this even with starting to teach yoga again. I have to get liability insurance. I'm not finding the ones I like. I'm just going to have to cancel with her and start in March, because I just don't see where I'm finding the right insurance. And I was like, wait a minute. Like, just get the insurance that I need, the base insurance. We'll figure out the other insurances later for the energy work and this and that, because I'm starting to do it in person now. So I realized, even down to the thing that brings me the most joy, I love baking. I haven't been baking because I ran out of coconut sugar, and I haven't been asking for support. I didn't tell my partner, I need more coconut sugar. I'm like, we're out, so I can't do it. So I just can't do it. And I realized even in this ancestral trauma healing, this is where that shows up, right? The Break the Cycle book, one of the things she talks about is how they hold on to little items. Like
Yeah.
she had this like little broken cup and she never got rid of it because what if she needs it someday? What if she can repair it someday? So we do that. We hold on to the things that are actually working for fear that it's going to run out. And then we don't keep moving forward. And so it does this future casting of what's not going to work versus being in present moment. Utilize everything you've got till there's nothing left to keep that forward movement going. And then trust that the next thing will show up. But don't worry about it until it happens, because that is stopping us from it. And so that's the next layer. So I've had many layers. This is my next layer is, wow, that shows up in every part of my life, including feeling resistant to just calling the water company because I've been having issues with a potential leak in the house. And I'm finally going, I'm just going to call. And when I call, they're like, oh my gosh, we've been monitoring your account. Yeah, I was just about to call and check in with you because there's clearly something going on and we're going to get someone out there and get a look at it because we've been actually on the case for you. We've been watching this. We were about to call you and check in and see if we needed to bring someone out. So if I had really just sat with that, I don't want to find out and feeling, I wouldn't realize that they're actually on my behalf working on this, trying to help me get this figured out so that doesn't suddenly end up with $600 water bill. We can utilize everything we have because we are abundance. It is not an opportunity. It is a state of being. We as beings on this planet are abundance at all times. If we are not experiencing abundance right now, it's because we're blocking ourselves in one way or the other. And for me, that's where my ancestral trauma was showing up. I realized my mom and her family, the women in the family, they'll go without. I don't need that lipstick, or I don't need that, or I don't, because the other people need it more than me. I don't deserve to have all those things. I'll hold on to it. Maybe I'll just hold on to this little piece of this just for 6 more months, just in case I need it, versus just use it and get another one. Just trust. So really just even something simple like that, how is it showing up in all of my parts of my life? How am I not taking care of business and utilizing everything I have to be the best version of me with that tiny little story, with that tiny little wounding that is not even mine. It's not even my wounding. It's someone else's, and I'm still carrying it and acting it out on their behalf. So that's where I think, learning about how to do your ancestral trauma work, that's where my journey's been taking me, right? It's really being open to the really crazy, fun ways it shows up. And also being open to learning about my family and my ancestry in ways that are very unconventional, because I don't have physical living beings to tell me the story. So it's been coming out in other ways.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for sharing all of that. You said so much. The one thing that I'll tease out of that story that you just shared is the misconception that people have about ancestral healing work, insofar as if I don't have any older living relatives, I can't do this work. And your life, your story is an example of how we can connect with ancestors in the unseen realms. It's actually an ancient way, but it's just been forgotten in our modern era. But our ancestors, they go beyond just our grandparents and our parents, right? Ancestral healing goes back generations and generations. And what I also teach in the membership and just in my work is that our healed, whole, and abundant ancestors want to be in contact with us.
Yes.
They want to be in relationship with us. We just have to open the door, and give them permission, basically. And they're always working behind the scenes to set us up for giant wins and tremendous healing, right? But it's a partnership. We co-create with them. And also, it's not on any individual being to heal an entire lineage.
Right.
That was a misunderstanding that I had early on in my journey.
Once it's all my responsibility to do it for everybody.
No, it's not. It's not.
No.
Part of navigating through that was realizing I need to be in partnership with my ancestors, right? They're going to do work on the other side they're going to wrangle the unhealed ancestors on the other side. So we co-create together. It's a partnership. We could take this in so many different directions, but I am going to focus us again.
Yeah,
Because you
absolutely.
and I could talk for hours and hours about all sorts of things. So, okay. So I want to talk a little bit about your workshop, which is inside the Ancestral Healing Collective Resource Library. I will put a link in the show notes if anybody feels curious about the membership. And I have some big announcements coming up about that as well. But you can go to heatherrebeccawilson.com to learn more about what's included. Your workshop, which you taught in February of 2024, is called Quantum Healing of Non-Serving Beliefs in the Shamanic Realm. It was so good. Can you explain a little bit about what participants, anybody who wants to experience it, like
Yes.
what can you tell them in terms of how to best prepare to get the most out of that experience?
Really, first and foremost, is when you are choosing to heal in the quantum field, if you're watching the replay, you're still going to get all the energy healing that you need from it. So one of the wonderful, amazing things about my teacher actually is the Westerner, but she was adopted, and she is a fully ordained Apache medicine woman who got permission from her elders to teach universal shamanism. So what I learned was universal shamanism. She is not allowed to teach her private practices through the Apache Nation, but she's able to take the things that all of us, that no matter what belief system you're from, it's universal rules, right? So one of the things about that is when you're working with the healing realm is you can set the intention that you're going to get the exact same powerful healing benefits from it on a replay from the past, present, future. You can do an actual healing and put it in a shoebox and give it to someone as a gift where they can choose when they open it, they're receiving the gift. I mean, it's really amazing that we have this ability to draw from that. So if they watch the replay, the healing work we did, I set the clear intention that this would be just as powerful for everyone watching it, no matter when they watch it. So you will get the full benefit. The other thing is, I like to call it non-serving belief. We call it limiting or core belief, but even in believing it's limiting, we're limiting, right? So is this belief still serving me or not? So when we realize it's no longer serving us, that's when it technically becomes a limiting belief because it's limiting us from moving forward because it's not serving us anymore. So we want to remove and heal that belief and then be open. So if you don't have any, let's say a download, which is a belief that will be replacing it, it's okay. Because if that belief is removed from you, what will be replaced is pure love. And that is the highest vibration of the universe is love. So the key is to really making sure that you get the most impact if you choose to do that workshop is being open to whatever comes up in whatever way it comes up, knowing that it is truly in your highest and best good that that particular belief system be healed. Once you're finished with that belief system healing, then you move forward fully believing that it has been removed and healed and that you are now living right now in your highest, best version of yourself as that healed person that no longer has that belief system. You have the opportunity to believe that once it's removed, it doesn't come back. It's gone. It's now been replaced with love, and you move and you act and believe and live your life as if it is true. And that's the way you can get the most impact out of that. Because if you believe it's going to come back and you're not really healed, the biggest thing I can say doing all this work with people and doing this healing work with bodies, with myself, with other people, is whatever we fully believe is our reality.
Yeah.
No matter what. So if you don't believe it's going to work, then it will not work. So you get to believe or not believe. And if you don't believe, that is your choice. Just trust in that it'll happen in the time that it's ready to. Trust the divine timing. Trust that if you're not ready for it right now, then it will still show up and it will still work down the road. You can be in presence of that healing, watch that replay, and maybe you don't believe today it works. So maybe 6 months from now, suddenly you do believe it works. And now suddenly it's working. And suddenly you're now doing the healing work that is now shifting your life. So just trusting the process that you will believe, you will receive, and you will get that healing when it is the perfect divine timing for your highest and best good.
Awesome. Well, so can you give a brief definition or explanation of quantum healing for folks who've
Yeah.
never heard of it before?
So in my training, we called it shamanic field. The quantum field is the same. So what that is it's a higher frequency realm that we all exist in. So we all exist there right now. What's really interesting is they actually finally, for the first time, caught on camera an image of a proton. The proton, if you look at it, it looks like an eye.
Oh,
It
wow.
looks like an eyeball. It looks like really like the eye. Then they caught an image of what they believe is what's called quantum entanglement. They believe we experience linear time due to quantum entanglement of our higher selves and our 3D body combining. And when they showed the image of that, guess what it looks like? The yin yang sign. Science is now starting to prove without a doubt with all these images what ancient ascended masters believed all these thousands of years ago. So what the quantum field is if you want to look at it, the shamanic field, the Akashic records, your higher self, the higher vibrational realms, the things that are existing currently right now that you can't see with the naked eye. All that is what's called the quantum field. Everything that has ever happened in this planet now, before, and in the future is all happening right now in that field. So that's what the quantum field is. The quantum field is every single reality existing now. And so you can access that, rewrite your story, immediately heal yourself, and become the version of yourself that you want to be right now, in this moment, when you access that. We are always in the quantum field. We're just choosing to believe that we're only in 3D realm. So we are existing in that at all times. We are entangled with our higher selves at all times. And who is the higher self? The higher self is who we are. So I channel a collective called the Higher Self Collective. And what they explained to myself and my partner, and you've actually had a channeling session, is everything's happening right now in this moment. And what they are is basically the higher selves of everyone, just channeling the wisdom that we already know. We already know all this. And right now, my left ear's starting to ring like crazy. We can access this field at any time. Many of us don't believe we can. So we think we have to be stuck in this 3D world. Oh, this is woo-woo. But guess what? Woo-woo is more ancient than current modern time, right? So we believed and we're in this mysticism as part of daily living up until a few hundred years ago, when suddenly we decided that we were going to call it woo-woo. Woo-woo is not really it. It is actually humanness. It is actually biggerness. So, quantum healing is connecting to that energy frequency that is always existing, that's bigger than this physical 3D body, is what it is. So it is the part of ourselves that is more expansive, that already knows everything, that already has all the healing abilities in that it will ever need, that has all the connections to all of the collective wisdom of creator, God, Allah, whatever you call your higher self, like deity or connection or whatever it is for you. Maybe it is just the universe, whatever is. If you believe that there's something bigger than you, no matter what you call it, that's what the quantum field is. That is basically this bigger realm. Even now, that's what the Google has a computer called the quantum computer. And the quantum computer was able to figure out in like seconds what usually can take thousands to millions of years to figure out, because it gets all the information all right now. So that's what's happening. When you go into the quantum field, you're getting all the information all right now. And you literally can just drop it and literally come out of this experience full, healed, whole, and a completely different person, should you choose.
Oh my goodness. I mean, we could do a whole episode
Yeah,
on quantum
I'm just quantum
healing.
healing.
And also, we could do a whole episode on channeling, which you briefly mentioned, but we're just going to do another episode on that because that's a whole other
It's a whole other
conversation.
can of worms, right?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for explaining that, because I think that quantum healing is new for a lot of people. They've never heard of it.
The
So
term
I
is new, yeah.
appreciate,
Yeah,
yeah,
other
the
people would
term
know
is new.
quantum healing as energy medicine, Reiki, shamanic healing field, like like if you've ever worked with a shaman or and we use shaman, but actually shaman, even the term, that's really actually reserved for a particular tribe in Siberia. They're the one that coined the
Mhm.
term. And throughout the world, we don't have that. You have a term in the Philippines, right? That's what do you
Yeah, Babaylan.
yeah, Babylon. My partner is Mexican descent. They say chaman, or they have another term that I'm sorry, it's slipping my mind, but he told me they have a very different term. Witch doctor,
Mhm.
kahuna, the medicine woman, medicine man. Those are all different terms of shaman. So basically what that is that is a person who has in their lineage has studied and has continually been down the path of their family of connecting to these energies in spirit world, and they live in it, they breathe in it. This is who they are, and they don't come into this and just up and learn. A lot of them actually get called to it. They choose to incarnate into it. And that is different than working with the shamanic, universal shamanism, the universal rules that apply to everybody. So love is the highest vibration on this planet. That's universal shamanism, rule number one, right? There's certain things. How do you protect yourself energetically? A lot of people, if you talk to them from all over the world, it's all very similar in those steps. So quantum is just a new term that describes the ancient ways that have always been there. So you can call it whatever you want. You can call it the energy realm. You can call it the spirit realm. You can call it cosmos, the universe, whatever it is you want to call it. It all is the same thing, just with a
Okay.
different name put on it.
Okay. All right. Well, so many episodes that we have to do because there's so many topics. Before we jump into your new projects, I
Mhm.
wanted to ask you if you wouldn't mind sharing your sun, moon, and rising sign.
So my sun sign is Scorpio, which makes so much sense because it is deep dive, truth seeking, and all about
Mhm.
healing your sexuality and playfulness and being in your spirituality. So of course, my moon is Aquarius and my rising sign is Cancer.
Okay. So fixed water, Scorpio, that's where you shine, right? We know that. Deep dive, transformation, truth teller, truth seeker, your rising sign being Cancer. I mean, you've got two water signs in your big three. So Cancer is cardinal water. So that's initiating emotion, right?
Mhm.
Initiating feeling. Cancer's very nurturing. Your rising sign is your vehicle for your divine mission. The people that you're meant to serve in this life, this is what they see in you that they want to develop in themselves. So, I mean, you are incredibly psychic. You are a psychic medium. You are a spiritual abilities mentor. It's part of, one of the projects that we're working on that we'll get into shortly. This Aquarius moon, though, I'm very curious about. So that's like a totally different energy from Cancer and Scorpio, though what Scorpio and Aquarius have in common is that they're both fixed elements. So Aquarius is fixed air and Scorpio is fixed water. So your moon is your emotions and your ancestral wounds and also the gifts that your ancestors have given you. Air is our thoughts, our consciousness, and our beliefs and our communication. And so what this tells me, and please let me know if this resonates, that your default for just processing emotions will be on the mental plane. Would you
Yes, I'm
say
very
that?
analytical. I therapize myself all the time, which is another reason why I got into body healing. Because I would talk my therapist into circles, and they would all think I was just fine because I was so good at strategizing and knowing my 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 analytical stuff. And they were like, "Oh, you're good." I'm like, "But I'm not good because I was
Well,
so good at
so,
that."
right. Well, so what do you do now to support yourself emotionally? Like, how do you do your moon so that you feel balanced and at home in your own energy?
When I catch myself now getting into that super logical, heady space that wants to analyze everything, I give myself permission that I don't have to fix it. I don't have to know why.
Mhm.
I can just feel it. And then I let myself just be deeply emotional. I let myself cry. I let myself move. That's probably one of the reasons why I got so into doing embodiment work, is because I wanted to get out of my head and in my body, because being in my head all the time wasn't making movement to help me heal. So now I can get into my body, and then, but I actually still practice catching myself with love, wanting to know the whys and hows and whats.
Right.
And then I give myself permission. I don't need to know the whys, hows, and whats. I just get to feel sad right now. I don't even need to know why I feel sad. I just feel sad. So you know what? Feel sad. Cry. Feel it. Just be in it. And what it's done is actually helped me heal enough that I attracted this amazing partner who also supports me in that. That says, I see you're emotional. It's okay to just cry. You don't need to talk about it right now. Like, we'll talk about it later. Just cry.
No.
And I'm like, okay. And that was important, because today I was like, oh, there it is. There's that feeling in my heart on the lower bottom chamber. And he's like, we don't need to know what that is. You don't need to know what that is. It's a beautiful reminder of, you get to just feel your feelings, and you don't need to know why they're there, or you don't need to analyze them. So that's where I support myself now in my healing, is that when I catch myself in that space, if it's not truly serving me in the moment, it's giving myself permission to not go into needing to know what exactly it is, not needing to analyze it, just be my blubbering emotional self and let myself pass through that, because there's wisdom in that. There's healing in that. So that's how I support myself now, is really practicing being in my body and giving myself permission to be there, and giving myself permission that I don't have to fix it.
Mm.
I don't have to fix it. It's not always needing to be fixed. Sometimes it just is.
This is great advice for anybody out there who has an airy moon. Yeah, that's really powerful. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And I love giving you astrology readings. It's super fun.
Well, thanks to you. I mean, everything that's happening over this last 2 years because of these astrology readings you gave me.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm happy to hear that. And it's so
And then the
fun.
bodywork sessions that we do in between those. And
Yes,
it's like all that goes, wow.
I know. It was all magic. It was all divinely ordained.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some new projects that you're
Yeah.
excited about, one of which is something that you and I are working on together. But why don't we start with some stuff that you're working on your own right now?
So I'm actually excited because I didn't think I would be back. I've been doing a lot of online. Most of my clients are on Zoom, and I love that. What I realize is that because of who I am, I can get really good at being a hermit. I am so good at being alone in my house and never leaving my house. And so I realized that what would serve me better is to be out in community. So the two projects that are the newest that are starting here is I'm going to be teaching this amazing workshop, a 4-part series, and I'm going to offer it online. But I realized I was looking at the dates because I already taught this workshop in person. I did this at our public library. I had this great workshop. It had great feedback. And funny enough, it was open to everyone, but only women showed up. So I really do attract the female body beings if you identify as women, regardless of what you're born as. If you identify as a woman, that is who I work. And I realized that's because I've been called to do that. And so I had this great group of female body beings show up. And one of them is actually about to get her doctorate in psychology. And a couple others were nurses. And they were just like, this was amazing. So I knew there was magic in that. And it is called Calm in the Storm. And it was just one workshop, but I really wanted it to be 4 parts. So I'm going to be teaching that in a 4-part series in my local area. I live in Oregon. The first one is a 2-hour workshop about stress, chronic stress, trauma, how they're the same thing, and then why they're different in the long run, and the effects that it has on your body. And then now that you understand this, we don't need to go in story. How do you regulate, how to do a nervous system regulation breath? When you're in a state of stress, how do you create resilience so that your body doesn't see these threats and stresses out there as like this tiger about to hit you, but more like, okay, it's uncomfortable, but I'm actually safe in my body and I can continue to experience this and then get through it and not hold it. It can actually just complete the circuit and leave. So I'm not traumatized or in chronic stress. So then I also teach some touch therapy techniques for you to get back in your body And then I take them through a guided visualization at the end that they can then do themselves. But first, how do you get all this charge, this energy, this stuff, this movement in your body? So I teach them breath work, movement, touching their own bodies to regulate and soothe their nervous system so that they actually can experience more of that more often. And then how they can get back to that faster and faster and faster so that they don't stay in chronic stress mode. And then I'm going to be teaching 3 more classes after that that will break it down so we can have a chance to deep dive into the techniques and then ways to set up a plan of action for yourself that sets you up for success no matter what happens. So I'm going to be doing 3 more workshops after that will just take what we do quickly in that workshop and then really dive into each one of these techniques more individually and really sit with it and really hone our bodies and learn to find what works for you so that you pick what you know. So I will be reteaching that online as well as a workshop, but I really wanted to get through the in-person because I personally find that when I do that, I learn so much more so that I can make it even more impactful for those who are going to be on the Zoom version. So that's one of the new things I'm doing. I'm going to be teaching yoga again. And these are all unexpected things that just kind of became an invitation to me that I'm saying yes to. And then in this next year, my focus too is that I'm going to become a physical trauma release expert. I'm going to be getting some certifications in that over the next year. I already have a lot of training in it, but I will actually get additional training that will literally make me an expert on that when I finish in the next year or 2. And so that's exciting because I realize that's where my passion is that. And then moving into your spirituality once we get you there, once we get you as literally a more blank slate where you get to now just be authentically you. Now we get to work on that spirituality part of it. And so that is exciting for me. So that's what I'm doing in person. I'm spending more time. I'm actually going to be deleting my social media accounts and doing more in community. So really highly recommend that you sign up for my newsletter because that's pretty much how you're going to find me. And then you and I were talking about this. I'm going to play with maybe this next year doing more YouTube stuff. So including maybe having fun and doing a gluten-free baking / spiritual self-development. That keeps coming up. So I think I'm going to play with it. Where I just,
I
get in
think
my
you
kitchen,
should.
teach you how to bake really healthy gluten-free option desserts because that's my favorite thing. And sprinkle the words of wisdom in how to help, heal yourself while you're baking.
I love it. You're giggling talking about it. So
Yeah,
that
I'm so
is
excited
a
about that.
sign that you need to follow this thread,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, totally. Because I'm
Yeah.
actually. Oh, yeah. That's the other thing. I will be teaching a cooking class in February as well. The library asked me to. They do a cooking class once a month on Zoom. And it doesn't matter if you live here or not. You can actually go to Coos Bay Public Library. That's where I will be teaching it. And we actually teach the cooking class live on Zoom or whatever their platform is. So you can go in and check that out. And I will be doing it the 4th Thursday of the month in February. I'm going to be teaching everyone how to make a pumpkin curry that I made up myself.
I love it. Well, you'll have to send me the link.
I will.
For everything so that I can put those in the show notes. So, all right. So we've saved this for last. Tara and I have been co-creating a very, very special experience for, I don't know, like the past
Since
4 or 5
October,
months.
November.
We've been working on this for a while. So, Tara, do you want to tell them what we've been working on?
We are creating an academy called the Everyday Oracle Academy. So Heather and I both will be putting in joint trainings as well as individual in this. I'm so excited. So our program is a foundational program. This is for female body beings that want to move into the 5D conscious leadership role. And it's actually called the Foundations of Multidimensional Awakening, the Journey to 5D Leadership. And it's a 7-module course. It is study at your own pace. You can take your time, but we are going to dive into learning what trauma responses are, ancestral trauma, and connecting with your ancestors and doing the ancestral healing work. We dive into spirituality and your spiritual ability. I always love to say abilities because everybody has spiritual abilities.
Yes.
They are not gifts. They are innately part of our own internal human technology. Everyone has these. Now, of course, I'm not going to win, a marathon because I'm not that kind of runner, but I can run. I still can. I have that ability at this time. So, if you're someone who doesn't have the ability to walk, you're in a wheelchair, you still can roll your wheelchair. So you have different aspects, right? So we all have the ability to some way, somehow show up in some realm in these abilities in your own unique way, right? So that's where you get to find out what that is. And then Heather is also diving into a whole module around astrology
Astrology.
and why that is an important principle for living. And it is so cool. I love these modules. We also, I forgot the keystone one, which is our module 3, which is our claiming your pleasure and using your pleasure as that catalyst that takes you into the 5D healing realm where you become this conscious leader. Because when you claim your eroticism and your pleasure, it is a keystone part of our healing that we as humans, at least in the US for sure, have removed from our healing systems. And so super excited about that. We have another module that is going to cover why plant medicines and psychedelics are so important for 5D leadership, how these have actually helped Heather and I both go into deeper realms of healing. So we're going to be talking about that as well. So this has become our little baby. It has become such an amazing program. I am so proud of this work. It's literally, I think, been channeled into us. And it is,
Yeah.
I mean, this is probably beyond a foundation. We have embodiment practices, breathwork practices that help you to integrate whatever you're learning. So you're not just in your head around it. So we have with each one of those where you get to walk away with an embodiment and a breathwork practice or something that you can do that integrates and helps you to continue to do this work and to embody this work. So yes, I'm so excited about it.
I am so excited too. And so, in terms of who this is for, I would say if you are a female bodied being, this is for anybody from any culture, any lineage, first of all. Just want to put that
Yeah.
out there.
Yes.
But if you are ready to embrace your spiritual abilities, your natural spiritual abilities, and step into your power, this is for you. If you're feeling called to lead and serve from a higher dimensional consciousness, you're going to love this program. If you want to heal some ancestral patterns and create lasting transformation, not only in your own life, but in your lineages, you're going to love this. And then also, if you are seeking a program that provides a very balanced approach to practical leadership and spiritual leadership, you're going to love this program. So we've poured our hearts and souls into this. I will put the waitlist link in the show notes below. We don't have a release date yet, but it's coming up soon. I would say within the
we're
next
very close
2
to being
months.
completed.
Hopefully within the next month.
Yes.
But get on the wait list. The link will be in the show notes. And yeah, you're going to love it. We loved putting it together. So I
And I
think
want to
that love
actually
comes
clarify
through.
too.
Yeah.
This is not just, like you said, this is for all female body beings. It doesn't matter if your idea of leadership is that you're a stay-at-home mom. That is a huge job. That I was a stay-at-home mom for a long time. I actually like to call it a domestic engineer because you are engineering and navigating and managing everybody.
Yeah.
You do not have to be in corporate. This is for anyone who wants to shift how they show up in their leadership, which means even if it's just for leadership of yourself. So it is really for every female body being who wants to shift into a higher consciousness on how they live their lives and how they interact with their community. And if you are in leadership, how you can become this conscious leader that makes a difference, even in the corporate world.
Absolutely. I mean, humanity and the planet are going through a huge shift right now. We're moving from the 3D to the 5D. This
Yeah.
year, especially, is going to be incredibly tumultuous. I think
Yes.
the way the world will look at the end of this year will be totally different than what we've been experiencing so far. Buckle
Absolutely.
your seatbelts. And I think this program will definitely support you in navigating all of these shifts, right? And it's not
Yes.
going to end in 2025. I mean, it's like the next few years, there are serious, permanent changes coming through. And we need as many grounded leaders as possible to help humanity, help the planet.
Yes.
We could talk about this forever and
All
ever. I'm
day.
sure we'll get another chance to talk about all of this, but this is the Cycle Starters podcast. And Tara, you know that I ask everybody the same question. at the end of the interview. So what new cycles are you starting in your lineages?
So the new cycles that I have been changing, shifting, and starting has been that deep self-responsibility of my healing work, of showing by example what it looks like to be heart open, vulnerable, and healing, and to use that as an example of healthy relationships with myself, with my loved ones. So the cycles that I've been very deliberately starting is, how do I show up more as me, allowing myself to be vulnerable, be seen, knowing that I am valuable in what I'm teaching, really owning my confidence in what I do as a human being, as a coach. I am creating health and healing in my lineage that I'm seeing now shifting in my own children and in my own family. Understanding that whatever I do, healing my own woundings and traumas has directly positively impacted my family without them even knowing how that happened,
I love it.
including some family members who are now removing themselves from abusive relationships, taking ownership of their lives. They're doing this all because my own cycle starting has given them the courage to do it. So that's one of the biggest cycles I think in my family is healing the witch wound
Mm-hmm.
and healing the mother wound, so that every woman in my family is confidently moving forward now in healthy relationships with themselves and removing and shifting their relationship with, so that it's now healthy.
I love
So I
this.
think that is the biggest thing that I have been working on and starting in my lineage, is being an example without expecting it, but just being an example to myself of what it looks like to be a whole healed version of me.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, Tara, if people want to learn more about you, if they want to find out how to work with you, where should they go to learn more?
So I have a website. So you can go to goldensouljourney.com or taracridland.com. They both go to the same place. So if you don't remember my company name, which is goldensouljourney.com, then you can just look at taracridland.com and they both go to the same place. The other thing is I have my own podcast, and my podcast is Fearless Spirit. And I did actually take a 2-month break. So I'm just starting to record again. I chose self-care for a little while.
Good for you.
And so I moved into a different realm where I'm really going to talk about not just the spiritual realm, but how to start to do this healing work internally. And so if you want to learn how to become more fearless in your spirit, then you can find me on all of the platforms under a Fearless Spirit podcast. So, and then maybe keep an eye out for me on YouTube as well.
I love it. Yeah, you better get on YouTube. I'm gonna be gently pushing you to do that.
Heck yeah. Well, I mean, there's no excuse. I've got like, my partner's a techie guy. I've got the little microphone, the web camera. We got everything.
You're
I have
ready
no
to go.
excuse.
You're ready to go.
Yeah. Ready
Well,
to go.
sis, thank you so much for this beautiful, powerful conversation. You shared so many nuggets of wisdom. We could talk for hours and hours, but we're just going to put a pin in some of these
Yeah.
topics.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just love being with you. I love working with you. Again, I said this before, you are a gift and a blessing in my life. And I'm just so proud to know you. So
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much, Heather. I feel the same way about you. You're actually a light in this world. And I'm so excited that you started this podcast because you have so much wisdom. So I'm so excited that you're sharing that with the world.
Thank you. I received that.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. That's it for today's episode. And we will see you next time on the Cycle Starters podcast. See you later. Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Bye.